professor. First of all, we have Professor Dr. Nail Alkan from Hacı Bayram Veli, Ankara Hacı Bayram Veli University in Turkey. And we have Professor Tim Shututkay from BIX Potsdam. Now I'm just moderating here because they have an amazing background and information that would like to share with us today. I would like to give first floor to Professor Nail Alkan to give his speech about world order after post-COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Roy. First of all, let me thank you for organizations to invite me to this panel, to this session. I'm very happy to be here with you. I will speak about the post-COVID-19 world order. What should we expect? What can we expect? First of all, let us say that the global pandemic caused by COVID-19 started around December 2019. That means almost 1 year ago. But in December, the COVID began to influence our lives. That means until December, we are influenced by COVID. But in December, nobody could think about the pandemic. Nobody could think that our lives would be influenced like it did. By October 29, that means today, there are 44 million causes in the world and 1.2 million deaths. Between March and June, there were several states that applied lockdown to decrease the spread. They closed restaurants, bars, schools. Many people started with home office work. This was a new experience, especially for many people and especially all for us. For me, it was a very new experience, this home office. And I liked it, I have to say. Germany announced yesterday a lockdown, a limited lockdown for restaurants, bars, cinemas, and theaters. That means that new lockdowns will start to come, I think. I think in Europe, you will see that in the next weeks also some limited lockdowns will start. How was the global order before the pandemic? With its economy, China was trying to challenge the system. Meanwhile, the USA was not strong enough to keep its hegemony. We have here to struggle for hegemony. Who will be the new hegemon of the world? The USA or China? The elections next week in the USA could be a new step in the struggle for hegemony. November the 3rd, we will see if Trump or Biden will win the elections, and perhaps there will be some changes in the world politics. We have economic shutdowns. States decided to close its borders with each other to avoid COVID-19 to spread. With this decision, economic activities between states are weakened. Especially in the European Union, we had a European Union without borders. But COVID showed us that we have to rethink many things, also the borders, because some years ago we had, especially because of Schengen and so on, we had a Europe without borders, but now I think we have to rethink something, and perhaps we have to get on the borders again. In addition, with lockdowns, consumption rates were dramatically felt. Especially many people lost their jobs. Many services had to close. We have economic problems. China was the first country facing with the virus and the first country who declared victory against the virus. But here we have to ask a question. Is China the new superpower of the world? Is China the new hegemon of the world? The next question is, can we trust China in its victory against the virus? Can we trust the Chinese regime if it starts? What can we expect? What should we expect? The end of the COVID-19 is indefinite. However, we can still assume some potential situations. The end of COVID-19 can be perhaps 2021, 2022, who knows? In global race, China is to seem to be advantageous. Since the country is good at controlling the virus for now, its economic is reopened. Meanwhile, the USA has elections and also has millions of COVID-19 cases. The USA in short term has lots of uncertainties. On 3rd of November, the elections will be held. That means that one uncertainty will be solved with the elections next week. Let us now look to the European Union, the crisis in the European Union. With closing borders, the supranational organization EU has faced several problems. The country started to protect its borders, and this caused the cooperation among the members to stop. In the meantime, countries like Italy, which has faced with COVID-19 very closely, needed help. However, the Union was unable to answer this request. The European Union, we have to say, has no common answer to COVID-19. Each member state tried to survive by its own facilities. Especially the EU members don't want to lock down, like we will have in Germany next week. The reason behind this is about economic problems. If a new lockdown would be applied, millions of euros can be lost for these countries. All over the EU members and the USA, many people are frustrated because of the virus. The virus is a very new thing. They don't know how to handle, and therefore many people don't believe, don't trust. They think that the state, that the government is lying. People started to protest against these lockdowns, especially in Germany, especially in France, in the USA. They are protesting the lockdowns. At the same time, they are protesting the state. These protests will not help to control COVID-19. This is a big problem because thousands of people are meeting, and this will not help to control COVID-19. There are many people, especially in Europe, that have lost their trust in the political system of their countries. This loss of trust can lead the people toward racism and far-right parties. Especially if you look to the EU Parliament elections 2019, we can see that in most of the European Union countries, far-right parties are rising. With COVID-19, the rising will go on in the European Union states. The world order has changed 3 times until now. If we look to the history, we can see that the world order has changed 3 times. The first was after the First World War, 1918. The second world order was after 1945, after the Second World War. And the third world order was after the end of Cold War. That means 1989. Now we have to ask ourselves if a new world order will start after COVID-19. Do we have to prepare ourselves for a new world order? Will there be a change of the superpower of the world within this new world order? In other words, will China take the place of the USA? A second question, how will Russia react in this position? Will Putin accept a new superpower in the world? Will Russia cooperate with China? Will we have a China-Russian superpower team? Another question, we have to find answers. Will the EU become a global player in world politics? This is not so easy because it is very difficult to merge 27 countries at once. As you know, the European Union has now 27 participants, and it's very difficult. Will we have an EU in the future? We have to ask. Will we have more Brexits? Perhaps you have also heard about an Itexit from Italy, Frexit from France, Grexit from Greece, and also we heard in Germany a Dexit from the AfD. This had been explained, and therefore we have to see in future if the European Union will stay together or if we have new steps like the Brexit. What will be the reaction of the United Nations, where 193 states are represented? Can the United Nations find solutions in the COVID crisis? If the countries want to solve the COVID problem, they have to cooperate. It's the wrong way to act for their own. Multilateral steps seems to be the best solutions. The important point here is we should not focus on national solutions, but international solutions. In near future, in many countries, the unemployment problem can come back. Therefore, we need an international program to respond to this problem of unemployment. It seems that our new future will be influenced by COVID-19. I don't know how many years. Let us hope that it will end with the starting of the Vacations 2021. I wish everybody a healthy future and a healthy world. Thank you for listening to me. And I'm also in time, 40 minutes. What can I do more?
Thank you, Professor Dr. Nail Alkan. It's a, I think, groundbreaking comments related with how EU and world look like after the COVID-19. Now, yes. I will give floors to Dr. Tim Stutkay.
Thank you, Dr. Archie Carlin. I don't know if you want me first to react to the speech of Professor Alkan, or do you want to get into the technicalities of my subject right away?
Depend on you.
Well, as then let's stay with COVID for a minute, and let me give you a little bit of my perspective, because I think Professor Alkan has touched on some very important issues here that obviously are at the forefront of our political debate in all of our countries at the moment. It's, you know, if you flip on the news, it's COVID, COVID, COVID. There's almost nothing else on the agenda. Clearly, the question, who is going to be the hegemon? Is it only going to be one, or maybe more than one? There's the elephant in the room. That's the elections in the United States. And when Professor Alkan says we will know on November 3rd, I hope we know on November 4th. And I'm not sure if we will, who won the election and who's going to lead the United States in the years to come. But that clearly will have a significant impact on which way the world will move. The other thing, and that is of particular importance in our fight against COVID, is you know, how are our societies organized? Has a big impact on how we fight the virus. Clearly, if you live in an autocracy like China, the government has other possibilities to restrict the free movement of people and to simply command how society has to react to a virus. And that turned out to be a relatively effective way of fighting the virus. Yet, coming from the country I come from, I'm happy that we are having the debates what the right direction in fighting the virus is here in Germany and within the EU. And I think as important as it is what the EU does and what our national governments are doing. If you watch the debate in particular in Germany closely, from the outside, it always looks like it's Angela Merkel who is in charge of the country. But as a matter of fact, when it comes to civil protection, she is a very powerless woman. She has no right to do a lot because the powers for civil protection in Germany lie with the states and not with the federal government. And therefore, the minister presidents or the governors of the states have a lot to say what to do and how to fight the virus, which is a good thing because the situation in the northeast of Germany, in Mecklenburg-Pomerania, looks very different to what it looks like in North Rhine-Westphalia. First of all, the population density is of a major difference. And before we started this, Professor Alkan and I talked about his time in Bonn. If you look at North Rhine-Westphalia and how the cities there, especially close to the border to Belgium and the Netherlands, how much they are integrated with the regions on the other side of the border, locking down the borders between Germany or North Rhine-Westphalia and the Netherlands is almost impossible because you have people living on one side of the border, but having to commute to work every day on the other side. So that makes a major difference in a liberal democracy like ours and in a federal system compared to a very centralized autocracy like China. Yeah, so the question is, what role will the EU in the future have in the fight against COVID? And then, of course, with everything that hopefully comes afterwards. And one of the most visible roles the EU has is clearly the allocation of vaccines. We know there's a fight between countries. Everyone wants to be the first and wants to have their hands on the vaccines when they hopefully become available. But at least there, the EU negotiated with the 27 member countries that everyone will have, every country will have equal access. And it's not the large countries and economically stronger ones like Germany have the first rights, and then smaller, less wealthy countries will have to wait and stand in line. So it is going to be interesting to see if that will strengthen the role of the EU, or if the EU will come out of this crisis more toothless than it was before. And maybe one more issue I want to touch upon, then maybe Professor Alkan wants to react, is one thing I thought was missing, and I will touch on that in my part. And that's how much COVID has sped up the process of digitalization of our economies and of our societies. I think that will be the most, the impact that we will feel the most coming out of it, that you will say, okay, there was a time before 2020 when most of our shopping was still done in shops, when we met for conferences such as this in person, and after 2020, where we save our travel budgets, unfortunately, and don't get to travel as much as we used to, and have a much more digitalized economy and society. So that's my comment to you, Professor Alkan.
Thank you very much, Tim. I want to hear what you will talk now. Okay.
Sure. So as I just mentioned, thank you very much for the invitation, but I wish I could have been there in person with all of you. It's I have to say, less fun this way than it would be if we were all in a room. Thank you, Dr. Archie Carlin, for inviting me. Again, I'd rather be there in person. After we spoke about COVID, which is clearly on the top of all of our agendas, there are also other issues that are important, even though they don't make the headlines at the moment. One of it has a lot to do with your overarching theme, chaos, complexity, and leadership. And that is decision-making under uncertainty and the trust in future 5G networks. And that's something that I want to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes to speak on. So there has been an evolution of mobile networks. I think all of us can remember when we, for the first time, had a mobile phone, at least the older ones. And also when, for the first time, we had a smartphone. But if we were all in a room, I would now ask you, please raise your hand. Who remembers when we've switched from 3G to 4G? So I don't know, in Germany, the 3G, 4G is the American abbreviation. In Germany, we called them UMTS and LTE. Well, who can remember that? I had to look it up. It's about 10 years ago. And to be honest, it didn't feel that great. It wasn't that much of a big thing. Yes, downloading was a little faster when LTE or 4G was available. But it just made using your smartphone a little more fun, but it wasn't groundbreaking. This is going to be different when we switch from 4G to 5G. Because 5G will have a much bigger impact on our economies and on our societies than the switches we saw before. And this is because of three functionalities these networks, these new networks will have. The number one is enhanced mobile broadband. That means pretty much that the network will be faster, way faster than 4G. And that more devices can lock into one cell. So that's the first thing we will notice, that with 5G, you have up to 100 times the speed of what 4G is like. And even with the devices that we have, with the next phone we will buy, you will see the difference. But again, that difference it makes it more fun to use these devices for web conferences, for watching television on your device, but it's not going to make that much of a difference. The second functionality that will be added is massive machine type communication. And that means that much more things will hook up on that net. Not only smartphones, but many small and big machines will be connected to the 5G network. Things that so far were standalone devices that were not connected to the internet. So way more things in our life, if you look around your room, will connect to the internet through the 5G network. Sensors in buildings, sensors in networks and machines will do that. And the third functionality that will be added is the ultra reliable and low latency communication. Low latency means the ping, the reaction between the signal going from one device to the net and until it gets an answer, if you will become much shorter. And that has a huge impact for many industries. Autonomous driving. You want your car to react fast if it picks up a signal. E-health. If you are on the countryside where there's no specialist in heart surgery, but you get heart surgery from a machine that is being controlled by someone in Ankara or Istanbul, that makes a difference, the latency there. So all these new industries become possible because of these 5G networks. And for that reason, it will be hugely important what these networks will look like and if we can trust these networks. And Professor Alkan, in his speech, of course, I was sensitive. I heard him speak twice about trust. Once, when he spoke about China. Can we trust China? The other thing is, can we trust our governments? Of course, in his context, when it comes to COVID. But this trust is of major importance also here for my topic. It is trust and security in these networks. Security meaning, of course, when you hook all these things to this new network, you want it to be secure. Secure meaning a status that is usually a function between the outside threat, which you have little control on, and the protection measures that you as a society apply, or we as a society apply to counter these threats. In cybersecurity, security is usually defined by an abbreviation called CIA, and it has nothing to do with the US intelligence service. The C stands for confidentiality, the I for integrity, and the A for availability. And these three factors make a cyber system, a network such as a 5G network, secure. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, if we look at the market for 5G, there are actually three main players. One, it's us, the consumers, the businesses that need 5G for Industry 4.0, e-health, autonomous driving, everything. And us for having nicer plans for our devices and our households. More importantly, there's the mobile network operators. To be honest, I tried to look it up. I didn't find the answer of how many MNOs, mobile network operators, you have in Turkey. In Germany, for 4G, we have 3. For 5G, we will have 4 MNOs, mobile network operators. So these are the companies who really build and own a network. And on the other side is, who can be the vendor for the technology needed to build a 5G network? And there we have, at the moment, 5 major players. Number 1, the famous and infamous Huawei from China. Number 2, Ericsson from Sweden. Number 3, Nokia from Finland. Number 4, ZTE from China again. And number 5, a bit as a newcomer, Samsung from South Korea. So as an economist, I say what we are looking at is a market with an oligopoly on the supply side, 5 suppliers, and an oligopson on the demand side. So very few, in the German case, 4 on the demand side for mobile network operators who need this equipment to buy. So now the big political question is, who are we going to choose to build our next generation mobile networks? And that is a highly political question. Because if you leave it to the market to decide, then clearly the cheapest supplier will get the contract. The cheapest supplier is very often a Chinese company, either ZTE or Huawei. But maybe there are other issues at play, and that's where the trust part comes into play. Because what we need to look at is not only the price that we pay for building the initial network, but you also have to look at life cycle cost over the generation in which we use 5G networks, roughly 10, maybe 12 years before 6G will come. And second, there are what economists call external effects, costs, hidden costs that are important, not for the telecommunication company, but for other parts of society who are not part of the decision whom to choose for building these mobile networks. And because trust, with all the things that we want to connect to these networks, is such an issue, you have to find a variable how to measure trust. And I think one that comes immediately to mind is the rule of law. Because if you violate my trust that I put in you, sort of a safety net, I can bring you to court and I can sue you and I can ask for compensation for the damages that maybe your network has done. So rule of law would be helpful as a quasi variable for trust. And if you look at it, Ericsson and Nokia, or better, Finland and Sweden, are the countries that are ranked in the rule of law index number 2 and number 3 in the world. Only Switzerland is better. So lots of rule of law there. You can sue Ericsson anytime in Sweden and you get a fair trial for transaction costs that you can deal with. South Korea, it's number 17 out of 128. So still good rule of law there. China, 122 out of 128 countries. And if you think of it, the struggle we have in Hong Kong, the Uyghur question, the South China Sea, there are many conflicts where our trust could be violated, potentially, and we will have to be aware of that when deciding about whom to trust building these networks. And I come to an end with 3 scenarios that are in particular important for Germany and other European countries because we haven't decided yet. Our telecommunication companies haven't decided, and the government hasn't decided for the regulation around it, whether or not Chinese companies will be able to participate in building 5G networks. One scenario I call the Goldilocks scenario, meaning that even though it is written in the annual report of our domestic intelligence service, how many attacks our industries have to deal with coming and are connected to China. We believe the Chinese government that they will not put pressure on Huawei and ZTE using the ample opportunities 5G networks will have to spy on a country. So we think, so the Goldilocks scenario is, yes, there are these possibilities to do much easier and better espionage, sabotage, and other things. But they won't do it because they say so. They promise, and we trust them. The second scenario is on the other extreme, I call Armageddon. Armageddon is, we have these networks, a lot of things are attached to it, by the way, also government services, security services, and to a certain degree also the military. And we have a large conflict with China, for example, over Hong Kong or the South China Sea. And they have the kill switch. They can say, no, guys, we do Stuxnet. Stuxnet, you remember the virus that killed for a few years the Iranian nuclear program? We have that, but for your entire economy that is now dependent on 5G networks, we have the kill switch. That would be Armageddon, because that means that would be the lockdown that we are experiencing because of COVID now, but then because of a conflict we have with another state. The third most realistic scenario is this, because clearly after using the kill switch one, it would mean rip and replace the equipment and you rebuild the network without Chinese technology, of course. The more realistic scenario will be something where we will have to spend a lot of resources to control for every software update coming from Huawei and ZTE if they become part of our network, where we have to use a lot of threat intelligence, where we have to spend enormous resources trying to make, again, like the internet, an inherently insecure network somehow secure enough so that we can send our confidential data or important data without being manipulated from A to B. That these costs, these resources, I think need to be taken into account when deciding whom to trust and whom to give the contract to build these networks. And maybe one last thing, because there's, like with COVID, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's a vaccine on the way, but it comes a little late to the market. And that's called OpenRAN. RAN stands for Radio Antenna Networks. OpenRAN is like the open source version of your operating system. OpenRAN means we are breaking up the oligopoly by having a defined architecture of the network, modularized and standardized, so that many more companies can supply single parts to the network, and not only these 5 that I've mentioned. So all of a sudden you can have a Turkish, German, American company who are not able to supply an entire network technology, but that have certain pieces that you need to build these networks. OpenRAN is already something that they have used in Japan. Rakuten, the sort of Amazon version of Japan, they have built a network with something like an OpenRAN standard. Vodafone has used that principle for a test network in the United Kingdom. And if we hold our breath, and again, in the German case, 4 mobile network operators, 1 will be completely new on the market. OpenRAN might be a great alternative to the, yes, cheap, but in a way untrustworthy suppliers coming from China. So with this maybe a little hopeful scenario, I want to conclude. And I think I did not stay in time as good as Professor Alkan did, but thank you anyway. and I'm here for questions or your comment, Professor Alkan.
First of all, if I can speak now, yes, you spoke about digitalization. Of course, I think COVID has learned us that the new life has started with digitalization. And if you look to the German presidency of the EU Council 2020, we see that one of the main topics we need fight against COVID is digitalization. That means Germany is one of the leading countries for digitalization. And I think we have to work, all of the countries, we have to work on digitalization, because digitalization will influence our lives in future. As we see, we make now a conference. You are in Potsdam, I am in Ankara, some persons are in Pakistan. I think that is digital, and this we have to improve. And this is, I think, a good thing. I mean, we can say COVID is very bad. Of course, COVID is very bad. Millions of people have died. But I think, nevertheless, we have also find some good things, if it's possible, from COVID. And this is why I think a good thing, the digitalizations. I can stay at home and I can speak with you, and you are also perhaps at home. I am in a sport manner. I don't have jacket like you, but I mean, it's important what we speak, what we think, and we can see each other.
Yeah, but it would be also important to go out for dinner later on.
Of course, of course. For myself, I like face-to-face. I mean, I give lectures at the university per digital, but I like face-to-face, of course. Sure. But I mean, we have to learn. Perhaps the COVID will go on 3 years, we don't know. That means we have to learn something new. And this is a very interesting thing, digitalizations. And I think the European Union, especially Germany, has started there a good step. And as you said, trust is the very important key in your speech, in my speech. Trust is very important. Can we trust each other? Can we trust the countries? I don't know. I mean, trust is very, perhaps we have to ask, do we have to trust? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, as you said, can Germany trust China because of Huawei? I don't know. Germany has discussed it 4 months ago. I know if they can give it to China or not, but I mean, can we trust? I don't know. I mean, this we have also to discuss if trust is impossible within this period. Mm-hmm. That's my comments. Thank you very much. I hope that we can meet face to face, perhaps.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I will visit you when I come to Berlin after the pandemic. I hope so.
So maybe any questions from the audience? Yes. I don't know.
Thank you, Dr. Tim Çututkay. Actually, your topic is quite interesting, and I think one of the will be the hot topic within the upcoming months, because it's already started discussed in most of the countries related with 5G, and the also along with the discussion of the Chinese possible hegemony in the post-COVID world. It will be full of information and the new insights we never see from very practical and technical perspective. Because of the time pressure, probably I will use my advantages as a moderating, and I have a question for you, and maybe we can take only one question from the audience, because we will have another invited speakers sessions later. I would like to ask that actually my question basically composed two of you topic too. In last week, we saw some news in Germany that it was a kind of law which gives permission to government to track the WhatsApp messages and other kind of platform messages. It was creating quite interesting controversy in different countries, this initiative. How do you see these kind of initiatives in the background of when we are talking too much about this digitalization and how we trust to companies or governments in this case?
Sure. Do you want to first? Yeah. Okay. So first of all, that's a proposal. it's not the law yet. So the parliament hasn't decided on it yet. And it's this proposal is the outcome of a long debate we have in Germany about whether or not in the digital age, the government, the security services should be allowed to eavesdrop on a conversation you and I might have, where we think we are in private, but they check that we are not discussing things that are illegal or against the interest of the state. And again, in a liberal democracy, these are very important issues because technically there are ways to make sure that it becomes impossible or almost impossible for governments to read or listen into highly encrypted exchanges that we could use. And there are messenger services that use very strong encryption, where the government has almost no possibility, unless it gets access on your smartphone, direct access to covertly listen in or read our exchange. Now, should the government be able to do that? In the good old days where we still sent letters around, there was a procedure that you in Germany had to go, the police had to go to a judge to ask for permission to read my letters. And the judge decided independently, yes or no. Do we find an equivalent for that in digital communication? The problem is that the equivalent means that there's some sort of a backdoor that the government has into the encryption of the exchange that can not only be used by the government, by our government, it can be used also by foreign governments and by criminals. And so it's a balance that is of particular importance for a country like Germany that, unlike China and unlike the United States, is trusted that our security services do not build things into digital products that our companies export. So there are proven cases from the United States and cases from China where you can see that, oh, this software had a loophole, a backdoor. In Germany, no, because the government doesn't have such control over the companies, the private companies, to do that. Should it have that? Well, for us, it's a business argument to sell to Turkey, to other countries, products to say, listen, this is SAP selling you something, not the German government. So no backdoors in there. And it's a fierce debate in Germany. Of course, it's also among human rights activists a very important issue. A journalist having an exchange, or a lawyer with his client, or with someone who's tipping you off, it makes a difference, but it's undecided. Trust is important here.
Thanks for the answer.
Yes,
Hocam.
Some words. I think we have a mass of messages on social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, and so on. We have also the messages from the people. I don't think that it's possible to check conversations. I think, of course, a state should protect itself against crime, against terrorists. I think it should be that Germany or other states should control persons who are criminals, should protect themselves against terrorists. That they should also be controlled, but not the man on the street. I don't think that this law will get it, and I think it should be used just for persons who are criminals or who are terrorists, not on the street, who write a message on WhatsApp or Facebook. I don't think that it will be in near future in Germany. I don't think so.
Thanks, Hocam. I guess because of the timing, there won't be any question. We won't have chance to have it. Once more, I would like to thank you both, Dr. Tim Stutkay and Professor Nail Alkan. It was a very great and interesting debate for all participants. Thanks for accepting to be with us here. You gave us honor to be here. Inshallah, next year we will be together in face-to-face.
Inshallah.
Absolutely, inshallah.
Inshallah. Have a nice conference.
You too.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank
greetings
you.
Greetings to Berlin.
And next time you come,
of course,
we do the dinner.
I will do it. I will do it.
Same for you, Schwai.
Okay,
thank you.
You.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.